If you were in a relationship with a narcissist, chances are you had some toxic behaviors too. My name is Jared Mello, and this is Mello Mentoring. Thank you very much to everyone who's been liking, commenting, subscribing. I've been seeing my views go up and my subscriptions go up, so I'm very grateful for that, and it's really helping. So again, thank you very much. And also my book, Radical Self-Respect, Avoid Falling for the Same BS, available on Amazon now, and also my audiobook will be coming out soon. I'm having a little trouble with the guy right now that had recorded it, but we'll see how everything else goes. But back to today's video. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, chances are you have some toxic behaviors too. And I think I have fallen into this trap before as well, where the relationship I had with the narcissist, they were all bad, and I was just completely innocent, and I was all good. And it took me a while to realize that, no, that wasn't the case. I had a part to play too. Maybe first and foremost, my part to play was I was a vulnerable person to begin with, because I wasn't necessarily happy while single. And narcissists have an X-ray vision for sensing out this kind of thing, and they sense when someone isn't quite happy and single, or maybe has weak boundaries or codependent tendencies, and they gravitate towards those kinds of people. Why? Because they know they can push those kinds of people around. And in my case, she was correct at first. She was able to push me around. So this is toxic to begin with, that I had myself in that vulnerable place, and I allowed a relationship to occur, even though I wasn't emotionally ready. Also, it takes emotional strength to not get swept away in a narcissist love bombing. That's another way we messed up. It's where if we actually get taken in by a narcissist love bombing, that's our own fault. Like, we should be listening and holding back to see what's going on, to see where they're coming from, to see just, are they real, are they fake, or what is all this all about? Because if we were to take a step back, instead of being emotionally overwhelmed and loving the sense of approval and love they were giving us, because we probably weren't able to give it to ourselves. This is our problem too. We gotta be able to give it to ourselves. We gotta be able to give ourselves love and approval and be emotionally independent. We have to. And what else? The codependency parts. When we're in a relationship with a narcissist and we become afraid to tell them what we're really thinking and feeling. We'll walk on eggshells perhaps, and we'll begin to break up with ourselves. We'll abandon ourselves and our wants and our needs and what we think and what we feel, all in order to keep the narcissist happy. All in order so that they won't go away. And of course, they end up going away anyway, right? But that's our side of it. We're codependent more than likely. We let it happen. We're not being real anymore. And when we stop being real, boom, things don't go well. So that's another part. Our boundaries are messed up. Like, we have to be able to be okay telling people exactly what we think and feel. I'm not saying we need to be a dickhead about it, but we have to learn how to confront in a loving and caring way, and to share what's going on with us without losing ourselves. Because when we shut up and we don't share anymore, we lose ourselves. And then that toxicity begins to build up, and that's when you need to have the blow-up fights. But of course, you don't really get that with a narcissist as much, right? You don't get those clearing of the air conversations. You might think you do, but the narcissist never truly clears the air. And so they're left with their deceptions and their fakeness. And sometimes a codependent person or a borderline person might think, the air is cleared, we're all good. Like, nope, not all good. And then when we begin to get devalued by the narcissist, it's up to us also to kind of call them to the carpet and say, hey, what's going on with this behavior? And if we don't get a satisfactory answer to that question, that's our fault too. Like, as a person who is with a narcissist, we are not just completely powerless people and victims. It's like, we have the abilities to walk away at any given time when people don't treat us the way we want to be treated. But again, it goes back to our toxicities. We probably didn't have the self-esteem and the boundaries and the self-respect to be able to do that. And don't get it twisted. It's impossible to have an exclusive relationship with a narcissist and to radically respect yourself at the same time. It's impossible because they do too many things that are going to force people to disrespect themselves. And they're going to have to look the other way. They're going to have weak boundaries. They're going to have to just let things slide or things won't last. And then once the discard happens, we can't ever really let them back in our lives again. And unfortunately for many people, they have the trauma bond. And so the narcissist makes that trauma bond purposefully so that they can come back into our lives and heal that wound that they created. But we have to heal that. We have to learn that they are not the answer to our problems. They can't come back into our lives and make everything feel all better. And then we'll begin to see through them. And we'll begin to see through the nonsense. And I think a lot of seeing through the nonsense that a narcissist does is learning about our part and how we allowed it to happen. And make no mistakes about it, we did allow a lot of it to happen. And there may be some exceptions to the rule. And there are maybe some times where the narcissist really just played some good tricks and someone fell for it. And they did still have good boundaries and they weren't codependent and they were okay on their own. Yeah, maybe. Sometimes that could possibly be true. But for the majority of times, that is not true. It started with us probably not being okay on our own. And continued and snowballed with us having weak boundaries. Us losing emotional control and getting caught up in the love bombing. With us being codependent. With us being people pleasers. With putting ourselves last in order to please the narcissist. In order to get that drug from the narcissist. As they're basically getting the drug from us too. Because as a codependent person or a borderline type person, they still feel, right? They still have real emotions. And that's what the narcissist thrives on, like a vampire. They love those real emotions because they don't have them on their own. All they know is they like narcissistic supply. And they can feel rage when confronted. They can feel rage when they're criticized or brought to the table about anything. And as a codependent type person, a lot of people would not like to call them to the table because of that very reason. They don't want to cut off the love and approval they were getting from the narcissist. So they let it slide. They don't say anything. But that's not the right way to go. It's like a narcissist is like a Hannibal Lecter. And there was a great scene in the movie Silence of the Lambs where Hannibal Lecter is in the cage and Clarice Starling is talking to him. And he forces her to tell the story of when she ran away from the rancher's home. And she saw outside of the ranch on the farm there that the rancher was slaughtering lambs. And she heard the lambs screaming. And she tried to save just one, but the lamb wouldn't come along. And she wandered away a few miles down the road. And she got picked up by the police. And then she never went back to the ranch again. But Hannibal Lecter is not able to feel emotions on his own. And so he wanted to feel that emotion from Clarice, the pouring of her heart that she gave to him, because she relented. She wanted to get information about the Buffalo Bill case. But instead, he forced her to tell that story. And if you look at Hannibal closely, as he listens to that story, an inkling, a small little tear begins to form because he can't have his own emotions. He cannibalizes the emotions of others, which is why Clarice's story is so meaningful and important to him. And I share that story because that's what narcissists do. They need that. They need the feelings from other people, the borderlines, the codependents, because they can't feel it on their own. And as we all know about narcissists now, they have many sources of supply. They have a supply garage, a harem they can always go back to. And each individual person they got supply from, not that meaningful to them. And they have a whole slew of other people to go on a speed dial's notice. And again, this is why it's important for us to recognize our side. And I'm not trying to beat up everyone who's been in a relationship with a narcissist. But like, once we learn from it, we gotta learn and move on and recognize our part to play. No one's perfect. Everyone has some shortcomings, some defects, or some toxicities. But once we learn what they are, it's important to push through them. And I've been guilty of complaining about people I've been with in relationships, and I could probably spend just as much time calling out my own behaviors in all of those relationships. Because when we point the finger at someone, there's 4 more pointing right back at us. And that's true. And being so busy trying to improve ourselves that we don't have time to criticize others, that's a good maxim to try to live by. And lately, I have not been living by that enough. And so, anytime I spend calling out or criticizing others' behavior, which is necessary in some cases, is time that may be better spent working on my own defects and having conversations with people that are willing to point out to me what my defects are that I can't see. By definition, we can't see our blind spots. And so, have honest conversations with people that say, hey, Jared, this is where you're messing up. This is how I feel when you do this, and etc. Call the things out to the table and be a good team with one another and learn to communicate. Like, these are the things that I have done wrong, and I gotta do better. So, I think it's important that we don't beat ourselves up, though. We have to learn from our mistakes and to grow from them, and then try not to make the same mistakes again. So that's my video for today. Please do let me know if you agree with what I said or disagree with what I had to say. I'm all ears. So with that, have a great rest of your day.